This episode of the Bottle Rocket podcast is brought to you by GamerClips.tv. Play, share and watch video game frags and clips with hundreds more added every day. Hit the link in the comments section to check them out. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Bottle Rocket podcast with me, Chris.
And me, Jake.
And me, Ben.
Now, me and Ben got to see Guardians of the Galaxy last week.
Yeah!
Bastards.
And it's been hailed as one of the best ever. It's getting fantastic reviews from all over the place. People just can't seem to say enough good things about this movie.
Mm. Are you going to say some bad things about it, Chris?
I don't have any to say about it.
This is
it scored over 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's the highest ranking Marvel movie in IMDb's top 250. There's countless reviews giving it 5 stars and perfect reviews.
Yeah.
And it's definitely earned it.
I don't think we were really suspicious about something that was getting like this so much universal positive press. You expect movies to get like a load of positive press in the kind of week they come out because most studios are pretty careful about who they invite to preview screenings.
Yeah, definitely.
With big blockbusters, they do tend to invite just kind of like everybody, but you know, they'll kind of promote certain reviews and whatever. But no, it's still holding steady at 92% on the tomatometer. Which is a thing. 176 reviews to 15 good reviews to 15 bad ones, which is pretty impressive.
That's pretty impressive for any movie.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, with it being a comic book franchise as well, you sort of don't expect it to have necessarily such a high rating on like Rotten Tomatoes and things. I think a lot of press reviewers typically they don't hate on comic book films, but they don't exactly praise them up. So I'm really sort of happy that it's getting the recognition that it deserves, frankly.
Definitely. I mean, we were talking last week about kind of that comic book films are sort of at this point where they could go either way. Like they could become sort of like super serious and too embedded in their own lore, or kind of too blockbustery. Where does this one sit? Like how does it feel in that whole spectrum?
It feels to me like a comic book movie.
Cool.
In the way that not many of the other movies have. things like the Iron Man movies and Captain America, they feel like action movies based on a comic book.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
For me, this has got the right mix of humour, action, the look of it. It all just feels like a comic book movie to me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
there's a lot more fantastical elements in this one, and I think that is partly credited to the sci-fi elements as well, which they haven't really been able to bring in the likes of Iron Man and Captain America, which they are trying to sort of ground, if you will, on Earth and base their storylines on Earth. Whereas this one's got the sort of the privilege of being the first Marvel movie to enter the galactic space area of the mythos and start expanding it that way. And I mean, it really paid off though, because the movie is brilliant. Props to all the actors playing all the characters, because they did an absolutely amazing job, each one of them.
Yeah, the casting choices were spot on.
Mm-hmm. The only one I was a little bit concerned about was Batista. Has he acted before?
Not that I'm aware of, but
he's been in WWE for a while, so yeah, he's been acting for a long time.
Yeah, sacrilege! That's not acting; it's real life, bro.
At all.
The character of Drax is, if there was a person and a character made for each other, it's them two.
Okay.
You do take about 20 minutes to get used to him, because the sort of literal manner that he speaks in. At first you're thinking, damn, that's really bad acting. But then after a little while, it sort of dawns on you that that's just the way his character comes across, and his sort of childlike honesty is part of his sort of vocabulary and the way he talks.
Well, based on because I Wikipedia'd a few of the characters the other day because I'm not really that big on the knowledge of Guardians of the Galaxy, and Drax the Destroyer in the original telling of his tale was a human father who died when Thanos came to Earth and he destroyed his family, and one of these other godlike characters took basically his soul and formed him into this like vengeful character, whereas in this version they've made him a specific alien race, which I think is a lot easier and a lot better to understand for the sake of the movies.
Yeah.
I'd much rather have this explanation of him being just a vengeful character because his family has been killed by blah blah than be some trapped soul re-embodied, and it just gets a bit crazy when you start talking about things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a real credit to James Gunn, because what he's done is he's simplified the origins of these characters because he's introducing 5 new ones in a movie.
Yeah,
and as well as James Gunn's done with that, I think Nicole Perlman deserves a big shout out as well, because she was one that brought this screenplay forward. And wrote it out, and you know, she's the first woman to get a writing credit on any of the Marvel movies.
That's ridiculous, especially given how many of them there have been by now.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, she's sort of done her rounds and wrote movies that she hasn't quite wanted to write. Let's say, and then she was given the chance by Marvel to choose a movie to write. And she chose Guardians, much to Marvel's surprise, and delivered this script that basically, you know, sort of got Marvel into believing this could be a really big movie, and she's done an absolutely phenomenal job. So, yeah, huge props to her.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome.
As Jake said as well, I can't believe it's taken so long for like a female writer to be credited, because you know there must be such a vast number of sex, race, creed, whatever of people working on these Marvel movies these days, because you know they're all just so wide-reaching and trying to appeal to everybody without being too unfaithful to the source material. But yeah, I mean, I think a big round of applause is deserved because the movie was really well written.
And it's not just that; it's sort of
well paced.
It goes to show that women don't just write rom-coms; they write kick-ass space battling blockbusters as well.
Yeah.
So well done, Nicole.
Yeah, there's a bit of romance in there. Not much, but I think the biggest romance is between Groot and Rokkit.
Yeah.
Oh.
Bromance.
You sounded almost disappointed there, Ben. Just like I want there to be more cuddling and long stares.
Yeah, that's what I was after. I mean, there was an epic soundtrack throughout the film, and I was just waiting for.
Oh, the soundtrack was absolutely amazing.
Of love is in your eyes.
It's beautiful.
There was at least one point in the movie where that could have featured, but there we go.
Yeah. I think
we'll say no more for the safety of spoilers.
Yeah, I think what you were saying earlier about them like simplifying the origin story sounds like a really smart move as well. In terms of, like you say, this is the first one they've set in the kind of galactic bit of the Marvel universe, which gives them so much scope to do like really imaginative and interesting things with subsequent films. But you do, like we kind of talked about last week, sort of run the risk of just sort of overwhelming people in lore that they don't care about.
Yeah, definitely. You've got five new heroes here that if you read the comics, they've all got very different and very broad background stories.
Yeah.
But what they've done in this movie is they've really sort of condensed it, sort of tweaked it slightly, and just made it so easy to digest. Yeah. So you've got these 5 new characters coming in, and an hour into the movie, you feel comfortable, you feel at home with them. You feel like you've known them for forever, which is a really difficult thing to do. But they've done it really, really well.
I think they needed to do it as well with these particular characters, because like the likes of Hulk and Iron Man and
they're household names, aren't they?
Yeah, we know these characters. A lot. I mean, even if you're not a hardcore comic book fan or whatever, even if you're just casual, you've got a fair idea of Iron Man, Captain America, etc. Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, I mean, I like comics, but I've never read anything, you know, on Guardians of the Galaxy, the heroes or anything. I've heard of them, but not really read about them. So it was nice to just have a sort of concise and still quite mysterious take on the characters' origins, because it does give you something to look forward to potentially for the next film and films thereafter.
Which has already been greenlit, by the way.
Yeah.
Of course.
Guardians 2 has already been greenlit.
Marvel don't wait around, do they?
Oh no, they certainly don't.
Is it 2016? I think it's 2016.
Wow, close.
I think so, yeah. Well, I mean, from the announcement of this movie to the box office opening was a massive turnaround.
Well, this was announced at what, Comic-Con?
Comic-Con 2013, was it?
Yeah, 2013.
It's a bit of a smack in the face.
2012.
It's a bit of a smack in the face of sort of Marvel's grand strategy, isn't it, really? Like, they were saying, like, oh, we're going to have all these sort of separate trilogies of movies to individually introduce every single hero, then they're all going to come together in this epic blockbuster of the Avengers, and it's going to take years and years to make all these films, and then just like, well, now in 2 years we can just bash out Guardians of the Galaxy and give you 5 relatable characters. It's like, well, that's better.
It's a massive achievement, I don't think I can think of a director other than James Gunn that could have pulled it off. Because there's that much of his heart in that movie that you can't help but enjoy it.
Yeah. Do you think Whedon could have done it? Do you think if they'd kind of given it to their golden boy?
I'm not sure. It would have had a certainly different feel. And although I am quite a fan of his interplay with characters and the way he bounces characters off each other, I'm not sure if it would have felt. I don't think he could have done.
I think he could have done it. You got to look at like Firefly and Serenity. That's kind of where his career started. So he's got sci-fi chops. So he can.
Definitely. That's why he's heading up this whole project. He's got the chops.
Because when I heard about this film, when we were kind of talking about it yesterday, and it did sound a lot like Serenity in terms of its tone and setting, like just kind of some misfits in a sort of galactic setting, with a kind of comedy edge to it. I watched the movie Serenity before I saw the series Firefly.
That's naughty.
But it was great. Like I really enjoyed it as a
film.
film.
You went back and watched Firefly, didn't you?
Yeah. Then I went back and watched Firefly, and I was like, oh yeah, all these characters, they're really cool. But Joss Whedon still was able to. He still introduced characters, as it were, but kind of by acting as if we already knew them all. So I think it is impressive. I think it's a difficult trick to pull off, to introduce lots of characters in a film. Yeah. Especially kind of a sort of action franchise and kind of a sci-fi franchise, and make it seem relatable, that you care about them.
Yeah.
So hats off if it achieves that, and achieves it like within like an hour, the first hour of the film.
Yeah, definitely. Like I say, within an hour, I felt at home with the characters. And that's really tough to do.
Yeah, because that's kind of what surprised me about Avengers, actually, in many ways, is that the first half hour of that film was a little bit plodding. As in, like, I kind of assumed that the whole point of having multiple films to introduce all these characters was that you could, opening chase sequence notwithstanding, there's then sort of about half an hour of kind of dialogue, basically.
Yeah.
So the whole point of kind of having films to introduce the characters was that you could just kind of basically have a film that was almost like 2.5 hours of action and witty dialogue.
Yeah. That seems to be the point, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You can't bring all those characters into a movie and then have them sitting around a table.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, theoretically, though, Avengers 2 will do that from the get-go. These characters know each other now. They're an established team. I'm looking forward to the beginning, because these team-up films always have like an interesting opening sequence, whether that's action or comedy or something. It's gonna be awesome.
So in related news, sort of related, NASA have come up with a new microwave drive that could make space travel possible. So I was reading the other morning.
I know. I was told about this by you this morning, and I can't quite believe we're in a world where this exists.
Well, apparently the Chinese came up with one last year that puts out a bit more thrust, but NASA have just come up with their own one. But they don't understand how it works.
No,
It's got the potential to make space travel more viable, but they don't know how it works.
it's just ridiculous.
They don't know how it works, and yet they created it. What the hell? Doesn't even make any sense.
It sounds like the plotline to Ultron.
Yes. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Likened to Ultron in many ways.
How did they design this? Did they find the instructions to it kind of written on like a stone tablet somewhere?
Yes.
Scribed
at the beginning of time.
Encased within a meteorite or something. It is ridiculous.
The meteorite has actually originated from the remnants of Krypton as well.
Yeah,
so I read.
No, the canny drive, which I'm just reading a thing here. So essentially, because this has been going on for about 10 years, like they've been trying to disprove this thing for about 10 years. So somebody, let me find the order of this. Basically, a guy called Shoya came up with the design for it in 2006. Managed to demonstrate it. So a Chinese team basically built it from scratch and proved that it worked in 2008, 2010, 2012. And then NASA have just built it on July the 30th. They've just presented their results and say that it works. It gives out like 30 to 50 micronewtons of thrust, which isn't much thrust.
It isn't much, but
seeing as it comes from nothing.
Yeah, it could potentially just be run on solar power, couldn't it?
But when you think about thrust and you talk about space, once you're in space, you don't really need much thrust because there's no gravity and there's no sort of external effects like that. So
unless you get a little bit too close to a planet.
Exactly. Well, yeah, then you're fucked, aren't you? But don't burst the bomb, man.
But yeah, so within our lifetime, there could be the possibility of people signing up for Starfleet.
Damn. Yes. Yeah, that's the obvious conclusion from this.
I think if scientists have created a device that can smash particles together at such a speed that they can try and create like new elements and things, I think we probably will see space travel. There are some fairly intelligent people on the planet, so
there's one or two, isn't there?
I hope so. There's a couple. Because NASA have been talking about a warp drive for the last year as well. Have you heard this as well?
I haven't heard this one, no.
Okay. Again, it's a theoretical way of doing it, but basically, the idea is you can't move faster than light, right? Like that's quite a fundamental principle. It's Einsteinian law of the universe. So what a warp drive does is it compresses space in front of you and expands space behind you. So you're not actually moving; you just move all of space around you. This requires quite a lot of power, but it does mean that you can go at. I think their initial estimates was that it would sort of require something like most of the power that was generated on Earth to move like a shuttle. So it wasn't really feasible. But in the last year or two, they've come up with a system that like dramatically reduces the amount of power that it requires, and some concept art ship designs about what it could look like, and they look awesome.
So you only need half the power of the Earth to move now.
It's like a fraction of it. It is still an unattainable amount of power, but now it's theoretically possible without
I will move space and time around me to get to where I want to go.
Yes. But it meant that you could get to somewhere like, I think it was, you could get to Proxima Centauri within like a few months or something like that. I'm pretty certain. I need to double check my sources, but it was just crazy.
Oh dear, we're going to space.
Not really moving. We are going to space. But yeah, do some googling. Have a look at the concept art pictures if we can find them and attach them to the podcast. I'll try and do that for anybody watching the video podcast on youtube.com/BottleRocketUK for anybody that's not watching on YouTube.
Yeah, nice plug, bro.
Nice. But they're so cool because they basically kind of taken sort of NASA shuttle designs, as it were, and kind of built sort of these. So basically, it's a circular ring system. So it like has like a warp ring around the ship.
Yeah.
They look sick. They really
You
do.
mean like in Star Wars?
Yeah, yeah, like those ships with kind of the rings that rotate around them. So that's what they reckon the warp drive ships would have to look like, which is just awesome. And I think they did an experimental version of it, which is like a few nanometers across. And I think they have managed to create a warp
future's
bubble.
always so much more exciting, isn't it, than the past?
But it is just a thing. Like, it's kind of nothing as long if people don't keep investing in the technology and wanting it to move forward. Like, you know, we've had like carbon nanofibers and all sorts of kind of exciting materials that have been in existence for quite a long time now, but nobody's ever pushed the tech forward enough so that we've got kind of, you know, indestructible ships or space elevators or things like that.
Space elevators sound cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Going up.
Yes.
9,000th floor.
Again, requires no thrust. Have you heard of space elevators?
Yeah.
All you need to do is just have a rock in orbit and a really strong chain down to the Earth, and then you can just lift stuff into space.
Oh, is that all you need?
That's all you need. Well, easy. So,
Brilliant. So, let's keep the theme in space, because there was some news about Destiny the other day, and their new 6-man raids.
Yes.
6-man raids.
Ben, why don't you take this one?
Yeah. So basically, Bungie announced the other day that in Destiny, once you've finished the sort of main path storyline, there will be some endgame raids, which will be, I presume, starting at level 20 and then moving up through the levels depending on the difficulty that you choose. But Bungie have decided to make these raids playable with friends only. So the 6-player raids that you can only play with fire teams made up of your friends. So no matchmaking as of yet. And one of the guys at Bungie has spoken up, because a lot of people are obviously quite unhappy about this. And he's said basically that although it does alienate some people, the idea is to encourage players to play together because the raids will be relatively difficult. Obviously, if you look at the likes of Warcraft, for instance, if you're in a guild or something, you're likely going to have known some of those players for a while. You choose classes based on what your friends are choosing and playing. And I think the idea is very much the same. If you think of an MMO raid, that's the kind of concept you've got to apply to the Destiny raid. So they really do want to force friends to play together, which is a good thing.
Now, I think the backlash from people, I think that's a really poor advert for video games. Because you should be able to make friends on these things and play with friends. And World of Warcraft did this thing a while ago where they introduced a matchmaking system, and you basically queue up and it puts you with a random group of people, and then you go through the content. And that sort of really, for me anyway, it really sort of cut the community up. You didn't have to go and look for people to play with and look for friends and look for a guild and converse with people, because you could just do it and then you didn't have to communicate with anyone. You just did your role, and that was it. So I like the fact that you've got to make friends to do this content. I think it's important to sort of advertise interaction between games.
I think
I'd agree. I'd being fairly noobish to most MMOs, but it does sound like the thing that people would probably play an MMO for, or I guess the thing that probably would make me want to play an MMO is to kind of be part of that community. And fair enough if you kind of gate some content off for those that have actually managed to form a guild or whatever, or managed to kind of form a group of friends. Did Warcraft used to work like you could only do the sort of the high level raids with a guild, or?
Yeah, and that was the most fun I've had on the game.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, obviously Warcraft's quite a big world. There was back when I first started playing, there wasn't the sort of fast travel option that is available now. So I remember this one time we met up in one of the big towns, and we had like a sort of 3-hour journey to this dungeon that we were going to do. It was the journey was too high level for us. But I made these friends that I've still got on my friends list now, and I think that's the important part of MMOs. It makes links and it makes friends for you. So you start introducing all this matchmaking stuff, and you take all that out. You're just playing a game. You're just playing alongside.
I think. Chris?
Oop.
Hello?
Sorry, my connection's dropping.
No, it's not connection. It's my microphone.
Okay.
Is everyone back?
Yeah, I'll do some more editing there.
Right.
It dropped out for me when you were talking. Just the kind of end bit about, I got your story about forming friends to do the 3-hour trek, and I was going to say something positive and affirming towards that, but I kind of cut off a little bit after that.
I was just saying, like, it's important that MMOs give you that opportunity to make friends and make relationships, and the matchmaking system just completely negates that.
Exactly. I mean, why wouldn't you just not play a single player role playing game if that's kind of all you're interested in?
Yeah, because effectively in matchmaking, the people that you're playing with are effectively NPCs anyway, because you're not really communicating with them, you're not interacting with them. They're just there to do their job while you do yours.
Exactly.
I think the difference, though, the thing you've got to remember is that MMOs and consoles games and the console elements is still relatively a new mix. Obviously, you've got some MMOs on consoles, like Final Fantasy 11 was on PS2, Final Fantasy 14 on PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4. Elder Scrolls Online is coming out on the consoles, but they're all subscription MMOs. People know what they're signing up for, what they're going into, whereas Destiny is trying to blend together elements of MMO with sort of first-person shooter. And if you think like a lot of shooter fans, what they generally tend to do is just play matchmaking games. Not that I don't agree with Bungie. I do think you should be playing them with friends, or at least attempting to make friends while you matchmake on some of the other missions, and then use those friends to go into the raids with. Because surely, if you're all hardcore enough and you've played a few games together, you're going to want to go in together to try and loot and experience all the content, which I think is a good thing. I mean, I think they should probably have a matchmaking option. Even though those people that go in matchmaking will probably do absolutely dire.
But I think it'd be good if, because I'm guessing in Warcraft how it originally was, if you went into like a 20-man dungeon or whatever it was on your own, you would immediately die.
Yeah.
And then you'd come back to that dungeon with 5 friends and die, but not quite as fast. And then you come back to that dungeon with 20 friends and actually manage to get somewhere. And that kind of organic learning, I think, is fine. Whereas if you kind of got to the entrance of that dungeon, immediately got paired up with 19 people and died, then you go like, well, maybe this sucks. So,
yeah, definitely.
I think part of the problem as well is, like, if you're matchmaking, you don't know not only who you're going to get, but what class are they using. What are you going to have a balance in terms of, like, taking
definitely.
Destiny as the example. If I'm a warlock, and Chris is a warlock, and then Mance is a warlock, and Jake's a warlock, but we've all joined up via matchmaking, and you might want like a Titan who can do some area damage control, or take a few more hits and get up close to some of the harder enemies.
Yeah, definitely. That's like I'm playing a lot of Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Phantoms at the moment, and everyone loves the sniper class.
Yeah.
So it's 8v8 matches, and I'm getting paired up with myself as a support, 1 assault, and then 6 snipers.
Yeah.
And then you lose. That's the sort of downside to matchmaking. Everyone just plays the favourite class.
It'd be nice if they had a halfway house, maybe. Like, so perhaps if you had a group of friends and you could advertise for a specific class or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Or the other option is to have a matchmaking mode that's set at a lower difficulty, with lower level loot drops, and then a more advanced level.
The hard levels are for friends only.
Yeah, the hard mode is for pre-made groups only.
That'd be a good idea.
So that will give you the opportunity to see this is what Warcraft do anyway. They have a sort of matchmaking system for the lower difficulty, so you can see the end game content, and then at the same time they've got hard modes which are designed for organised groups, which you still see the same content but you get better loot drops.
So I think a lot of the reasons why multiplayer online games fail is because they do try and just create a single player experience in a multiplayer world, and quite frankly, other players just really mess up a single player online RPG.
They do, yeah.
If you're trying to tell a sort of a kind of riveting story, it's really undone by some guy just kind of jumping on the table where all the characters are having the conversation and and teabagging the guy who's speaking repeatedly. It's just other people ruin this experience. So I think if you are going to build an online experience, I think one of the reasons why Warcraft is so successful is because they do build it around this idea of community, this idea of coming together to overcome really difficult challenges. And they do that by creating really difficult challenges. And if you just kind of make it too easy to accomplish the challenges, or so that you don't have to interact with anybody, then you may as well just be making a really good single player game, putting your efforts into that. It's one of the reasons. Yeah. It's one of the reasons why sort of Elder Scrolls, I think, is probably not going to work very well. I don't think it has worked very well.
It's such a great idea for a game, but everything. I can't really talk. 'Cause I haven't tried it. I haven't got my hands on it yet. But everything that I've heard is negative, which is sad, really, because they've got such good pedigree.
In my opinion, though, they didn't even need Elder Scrolls Online. They just needed to add in like co-op dungeons into Skyrim or a PvP arena.
Exactly.
Because there were so many times I was going through the dungeons in Skyrim, and I was just thinking, oh, if only I could be playing it with such and such a friend, even if it's only 2-player co-op in dungeons. And even if I dropped into Jake's game, for instance, even if I didn't get to keep any of the loot drops because it was just to help him progress his game or whatever, I wouldn't care about that. It would just be fun to go in there and kick ass together.
Absolutely. So they maybe they aimed a bit too big, I guess. Like going for a sort of fully online world instead of just kind of building cooperative stuff into things. Like I've been playing a lot of sort of Far Cry 3 recently, and kind of the only sort of online elements to that are these kind of challenges that are just kind of dotted about through the world, where you can compete with other people who've done that challenge, and that's fine. That's kind of enough. It's like, there's your online bit. If you don't want it, you don't have to have it. It's okay. Yeah. And go back to hunting bears with a flamethrower.
I think it's got competitive multiplayer on Far Cry 3, but I don't really think the game engine's that well suited to a competitive online game. I think, oh god, I'd get so wound up.
No, it's a very single playery sort of experience. Kind of basically role playing Rambo.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great. Check it out if you haven't already.
Brilliant. And I'm afraid that about wraps us up for time there. For this week.
God damn it.
Don't forget, if you've enjoyed the podcast so far, then feel free to give us a like on Facebook. Just search for Bottle Rocket on Facebook, Rokkit. Check us out on Twitter @Bottle Rocket, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already.
Please.
Please, God. These kids need to eat.
They do. They're hungry.
Let's get this rocket to space.
The tiny, tiny proportions.
So, thanks for watching, guys. I've been Chris.
I've been Jake.
And I've been Ben.
Catch you next time.
Bye.